one of these tournaments this weekend. It doesn't have to be a Providence weekend, but just like a good weekend. Are you going to travel? And he was just like, I'm not going to go to Kansas City next weekend because there's a Grand Prix in Worcester, which is like 30 minutes from his house.
Yeah.
But he's like, I will go to Dallas and other places. And I'm just like, all right, the game is on.
I feel like Ross already travels a good bit anyway.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't travel, to the, the West or anything like that.
Right, yeah, sure.
Sometimes he goes to California. I've seen him at an Open in Los Angeles when he went to college in California.
Right.
So he was visiting some friends there, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's not Kansas City the one I'm going to be watching for. It's Dallas in 2 weeks.
Sure.
See who's going to be at that one. Briksza.
Playing Jund Midrange. So we kind of hyped up Boswell a little, playing green-white aggro, deck he is known for. Jund Midrange, not a deck that anyone's known for, because it's not really a deck, or it hasn't been until M15 has dropped. M15 has provided some Planeswalkers, and Rudy is using them to full effect.
He has many of them.
Many. Nine Planeswalkers with 6 different names, I believe.
2 Liliana Vests, 1 Garruk Apex Predator, 1 Chandra Pyromaster, 1 Nissa Worldwaker, 1 Vraska Unseen, and 3 copies of Xenagos the Reveler, and there is Xenagos the Reveler, so I imagine a Satyr token is going to join the party. Now, there's been, not this exact list, but a Jund Planeswalker deck has been picking up a little bit on Magic Online. I know in Jerry Thompson's Daily Digest, he had written an article, just a little short on Jund Planeswalkers kind of picking up, and players were just like, wow, that's way different than anything we have really seen. But that was before it got all these new options.
Right.
There's a bunch now, which is actually pretty exciting.
Yeah, this is a deck that's been kind of a fringe player for a while. And it did pick up some new kind of explosive, flashy options. Garruk Apex Predator, about the flashiest you can get in Standard right now. But subtly, the mana base improved a lot too. Land of War Waste does a lot of work here.
There are 2 forces, only 6 temples. So that's a little bit surprising. Then, of course, there are the 12 dual lands and some basics and some Mutavaults down there for fun.
And actually, it turns out
I'm actually surprised
Rudy is not
waste.
playing any Land of War Waste. So
I would probably, depending on his color sensitivity, 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah.
You don't get any of the other ones, right? Black, red.
No,
and,
that's the only one that fits.
Okay, gotcha.
Kind of the helpful way to remember that is if it's an allied shard, like if it's one of the shards from shards, you only get 1.
Oh,
but
okay,
if it's an enemy shard, you get 2.
Okay. So another Satyr token is going to come in here. You see Immortars take care of the Loxodon Smiter. Fleecebane Lion will be ready to attack here in just a moment. And it will. Briska's hand. Oh, he's just going to let his Xenagos go. That was very quick that he let that move away.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Here's a Smiter. Pass the turn back.
Okay, so far this game, Rudy's been playing the game he wants to play, basically, answering Andy's threats 1 for 1.
Yep.
And still at 20, importantly. Getting into the mid-game. When you're slamming your Planeswalkers and you're not facing down just a horde of animals and you're still at 20, the game has gone well for you.
I agree. Now, one thing here, Boswell has a bunch of cards in his hand. The reason for that, of course, is because he hasn't been playing any lands. So once he does start to find some lands, things may get a little more hairy. A card like Advent of the Worm will probably show up to the party. Your favorite card.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Andy Boswell only plays 3 of that card.
See, I don't know about that.
I've given him several stern talking tos about that, and he hasn't listened yet.
Well, he does win a lot with this.
He does.
So.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. His build is very 1-drop heavy, even more so than most. He is actually down 1. He used to play 10 1-drops. He only has 9 now.
Okay.
4 Experiment 1, 3 Soldier of the Pantheon, 2 Sunblade Elf. And in this particular game, he didn't really get the curve that he normally expects to. And that's kind of why Rudy has managed to stabilize, I think. He didn't actually start the party until turn 2. It's weird to say that about someone that went like 3-3 for 2, 4-4 for 3.
Yep.
But Andy Boswell drew all his expensive cards this game.
Here's the thing I like about this green-white deck. Briksza has been sitting at 20 for a little while. Then he goes some chump blocking, things like that. Boswell's attacking for 7 just consistently. He's just played his 4th land past the turn back. You have to imagine a 5/5 is going to come on the table. He has 3 copies of a Johnny, Caller of Pride in his deck. He can close out a game so fast.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to play Advent of the Worm right now. Not much of a surprise, but there's not anything that Rudy can really do about it. And I'm just dead. So this game where, Rudy was basically at 20 for a little while and there's some Planeswalker action, Boswell said, okay, that's cool, take care of your Xenagos and kill you 2 turns later.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the big selling points, I think, on green-white is, it's got some really efficient and powerful creatures.
Right, yeah, efficient and lower down on the curve. Of course, Rudy has some very powerful spells of his own. We saw him that game. He had Liliana Vests, Nissa Worldwaker, and Garruk Apex Predator stuck in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
If those cards get out and come to play, they outclass Andy Boswell very quickly.
Yes.
But of course they didn't, because Andy Boswell tapped 4 mana, played Advent of the Worm, and the game ended. Funny how that works. Maybe you should play a 4th one, Andy. He can't hear me right now, but I'll tell him later.
I know you will. Again, for the 100th time.
Yeah.
Boswell does win game number 1 here with Green aggro over Briksza playing Jund mid-range. We'll look at the sideboards. I've got Rudy in front of me. I'm looking at Thoughtseize, 2 Putrefy, a Golgari Charm, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 2 Mistcutter Hydra, Bow of Nylea, Back to Nature, 3 Anger of the Gods, 2 copies of Rakdos Return, and Slaughter Games. I actually like Putrefy in the matchup. That question I'm actually going to ask you, Anger of the Gods, is that a card that's pretty good against green white?
Yeah, sure.
It's fine.
Of course, it's an answer to voice.
Okay.
So like that's huge. It exiles it, so you don't have to deal with it on the back half.
Okay.
Andy's list in particular, of course, has a couple more 1-drops than normal. It's geared a little bit lower. It's not a perfect answer to the. It's not just like you slam it and the game's over, because of course there are flash threats. There are things that are bigger. It's really awkward against Lockstone Smiter, for example. And it's not great when you're on the draw, which Rudy is not this game. But, in game 3, if there is a game 3, he will be. So he'll potentially be like trying to cast it into open mana from Andy Boswell. So he has to worry about Boon Satyrs and Selesnya Charms and all that. Okay. But the card is still very good and still a card you're happy to have in your deck in this matchup.
Those are the 4 cards I expect to see come in. Golgari Charm's actually not. I can't imagine that card's good.
No, I'm not a huge fan. I've had a lot of players when I've been playing Green White have brought it in against me because of Banishing Light.
Okay.
I personally don't play any Banishing Lights, so it's really bad against me. But Andy does have Banishing Light. He has 2. See, 2 in the main, and just the 2. Okay. They're very good, of course, against the 9 Planeswalker deck.
Yeah.
So I could actually see Rudy bringing in Golgari Charm for that reason.
Okay. What else does Andy have?
Andy has access to 2 Gods Willing, 1 Advent of the Worm, and the 4th is there. That's right.
Yeah, but it's in the board.
It's the board. Yeah. Anyway, well, that's coming in just on principle, I assume. I don't know what matchup you don't want it, so I just assume he boards it in.
Okay,
in every matchup. Also, we'll say he's bringing in that one. 2 Gods Willing, 1 Advent of the Worm, 1 Mistcutter Hydra, 4 Skylasher, 2 Ajani Steadfast, and that is to go with his 3 Ajani Call Over the Pride, 2 Archangel Thune, 2 Hunt the Hunter, and 1 Citizen Tactics. So, I do like the Advent, of course, but I'm not sure that any of these are especially relevant in the matchup. There are a lot of cards that they're good but not great. I can see an argument for Mistcutter Hydra, oddly enough, just because it is a haste threat that when you have an empty board and Rudy plays a Planeswalker, you can immediately kill it. That can be huge. Several of Rudy's Planeswalkers don't immediately protect themselves.
Sure.
Yeah, Nissa doesn't untap the land that it animates, things like that.
Just makes it a 4/4.
Right. Let's see, the Archangels aren't especially great, especially when you consider the amount of removal that Rudy has access to. Yeah, I'm probably not going to board much. The two Gods Willings, those are actually, particularly after board, I think you have to assume that Rudy is going to have more removal and more relevant removal. Black decks in the standard, they don't usually start Doomblade, but you can bet they're going to have it after board. Yeah. So having kind of 1-for-1 answers to removal spells, they get better. That gets better post board. So I think Gods Willing is pretty safe too. I'm bringing in 2 Gods Willing and 1 Advent of the Worm, and that's probably it actually.
Who do you think's favored?
Well, of course, I think Andy Boswell's favored. Is it a question? He's up 1-0.
Yeah, I guess. Might as well just book it then. I don't even know why I even bother playing the next 2 games, assuming we get to a 3rd one.
Sure. It's hard to say. I need to take a closer look at Rudy's deck list. There's a lot going on here. These are all very powerful cards is the thing. Yeah,
they really are.
He has the full 4 Stormbreath Dragon. Green White has a problem with that card. And then some of these cards, I don't even know what to say. Like Garrick Apex Predator, that card's really good.
If that resolves, you lose the game.
One would assume. I've never seen it in play. I don't know how it works. It's probably good. It may not be good enough, but it's good.
Stable or ahead, they should lose, I think.
Yeah. So it's really just, it's tough to say like how strong Rudy's deck really is. It's the epitome of mid-range.
Yeah.
And I just generally don't approve of that kind of nonsense.
The only thing I don't like about like mid-range per se is his deck is super reliant on that card.
Yes, well he has it. So
yeah, I mean, and he has it this game. The deck, it's night and day. When he has Sylvan Caryatid, his deck is insane, and when he doesn't, it's not as good in my opinion. I don't want to say it's bad. It's just nowhere near as good and efficient. Gonna play a Stomping Ground on tap here, will Briksza, and he's just gonna play 2 more copies of Sylvan Caryatid. So we could see a huge Planeswalker.
Has it all.
Very, very
Turn 4 Apex Predator, is that coming?
He's got an Anger of the Gods, a little bit of a non-bow there.
Yeah.
And he does have a Nissa.
Anger of the Gods is not exactly a non-bow with Nissa. That's pretty sweet. Make all the 4/4s.
No, that is a combo.
Yeah.
That one is a combo. There's a Voice of Resurgence. That's going to come in. Boswell's going to take 1 to do it. This is the kind of deck to me where it's just like, you really wish that Farseed was in there. So you get 8 accelerants. Then your deck, I think, is actually really good. Because we've seen decks like that in the past. here comes Stormbreath Dragon. But when you only have 4, it's so important for, Sylvan Creator to resolve. And then, again, even though it has hexproof, there's no guarantee it'll live, because Devour Flesh is the thing that people do in the format. So, you can see right now, Rudy's off to a fantastic start. He's got a Stormbreath Dragon early and ahead of schedule. The race is certainly on here right away.
Yes, Stormbreath Dragon is excellent in the matchup because the green-white decks cannot get rid of it. They can race it, and they're reasonably well equipped to race it. But it's not leaving the board once it's here. And Rudy can, of course, he has that Anger of the Gods, so, like, Boswell is going to try to race by playing more things, and then he's going to get punished for doing that, and that'll be the game. That's how I would assume this is going to play out.
That's how you're trying to sculpt it, at least, that's for sure. There's another copy of Stormbreath Dragon. Briksza going to come in for 8 points of damage. Boswell's going to go down to 6.
Yeah, or you could just not play Anger of the Gods and instead play a second Stormbreath Dragon. You win the race that way.
It's actually pretty important that he's not showing Anger of the Gods, too, for the next game when he's on the draw trying to catch up.
Definitely true. And, yeah, considering the start that Rudy had, turn 2 Caryatid, turn 3 Caryatid, I'm not putting him on Anger of the Gods at that point.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. Don't know if it's going to surface in the 3rd game, but we're going to have an attack here for 2. Or excuse me, for 3 with the Fleece Mane. There's a block, so that's going to bite the dust.
Yeah, Boswell without good options here. Just going to pass the turn, and like I said, no answers in his deck to Stormbreath Dragon. The only way he can get rid of it would be to Cetizen Tactics on a mono-green creature.
Cute.
It can happen sometimes.
It can.
One of the many things that Advent of the Worm can do, by the way.
This has got to stop.
It does it though?
Actually, Advent of the Worm is easily like my favorite card, like from this standard format that does not see play. But like I always think of like in the past.
Yeah.
Like it's just like like 4 years ago or something, like some like long time ago. But for whatever reason, I think of like when Anurid Brushhopper came out.
Right.
And everyone's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
What are they doing printing this card? And like Advent of the Worm's like whatever, it just doesn't see play.
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
like good.
Yeah, the rate on that card is so absurd that like even green-white decks that have no business casting it, something like like the green-white Astral Slide deck that won Worlds in 2004. Like that's like a board control. It has like 12 sweepers. Like what does that deck want with a 5/5 for 4? But I guarantee you, if Advent of the Worm had been legal then, it's a green-white deck. You play Advent of the Worm.
Yeah.
Like it would just be assumed the card is so good that you have to do it.
That's what I always think. Just like cards that just like look in, like Advent of the Worm was like basically all upside. There are some like small things like obviously you can bounce it and Living Ring banishing light effects and it doesn't come back when you kill the enchantment. But by and large, it's an instant 5/5 for 4 mana in a deck that can play it in a mana colors that can play it on turn 3, and it's just always awesome. Like at that Pro Tour. Like, everyone knew going into Advent of the Worm was awesome. Yeah. And it's like, when your opponent passes with 4 mana up in green-white, it's like, okay, they have Advent of the Worm. Great, you can't do anything about it.
You can dispel it.
Yeah.
That's what you had to do.
You have to go through some nice hoops.
Yeah, it got to the point where you were boarding in Dispel against the green-white aggro deck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, it's like, frustrating or annoying is not the word, but it's just like, I feel like that card should have just been better over its span.
It was... I did my part anyway, so...
Well, you certainly tried. You certainly tried.
I feel like the card at least, it got its fair share.
It did win, the Block Pro Tour, so maybe I'm being a little unfairly harsh on it. But I remember just when I saw Advent, I'm just like, you got to be kidding me.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
That's what I thought right away.
Yes. Like, how far we've come. And to be fair, that's happened for a few years now, I think. Phyrexian Obliterator is another one that comes to mind for me.
Sure.
Just, like, imagine, like Masks block standard. If Phyrexian Obliterator was in that format,
yeah.
Ooh boy.
Yeah.
Things would have been different.
Things definitely would have been different. I don't know if it's good or bad that like those cards aren't as good as I think we expect them to be. Like, we see a card like that like many moons ago. It's just like that card's busted. That card's going to define things. Because like I think of like creatures that define things like FTK. Yeah. When that was a card during a standard format, it just defined everything.
Sure.
You can't play X amount of cards now.
Right. Well, that exists. I don't remember who wrote the article or who first kind of like framed it this way, but I read this and it made a ton of sense. Powerful creatures at this stage are basically either Baneslayers or Moldrifters. Okay. Those were kind of the two like premier cards in the standard format at the time this article was written. Again, I wish I could remember who wrote it, but the idea is like you either slam them and they're so huge and scary that if you don't deal with them immediately, you're going to lose. Advent is a good example here. Stormbreath, Polakranos.
Okay.
Or they are creatures that you play. And you can deal with them or you can not deal with them. It doesn't matter because they've already done their job. They've already given you that value. Okay. You mentioned Flametongue Capu.
Yep.
That was the kind of the the marquee Moldrifter. I guess Moldrifter's the marquee Moldrifter, but you know. But like Flame Macavu is like one of the best examples of a kind of a quote-unquote Moldrifter style power creature that really just dominated Standard. You know, here I think Corsair Crewfix is a good example. Are there other?
It's like kind of Corsair's like interesting. It's like kind of underwhelming. Like I don't know if you realize that you're losing to it, but that's actually what you're losing to.
Actually, and Planeswalkers I think are actually very good examples of this.
Sure.
Like the vast majority of Planeswalkers, like you play them and you activate them once, and then maybe they die. You know, if they don't die, Planeswalkers are actually kind of both rolled into one.
Sure.
It's like play this and answer it or you're dead.
Sure.
But if you answer it, cool. I got an activation. You know, maybe
I got some value.
Yeah, I got you know, a -2 out of Jace, or I got to make a token or make 3 tokens or whatever. You know, if you get your one activation in, you're good.
Okay.
It's kind of like a kitchen thing style thing.
I can see that. I can see that.
So I think that's really that's the difference. That's why some of these cards that you think are just like so like off the charts powerful, they don't register the way you think they will because they're just Baneslayers. You know, they're just big creatures.
Sure.
They don't immediately change the board whether or not they're Doombladed.
We're underway.
Yeah.
Game number 3, Temple of Plenty. No 1-drop here for Mr. Boswell. How do you feel about the 2 Mutavaults in his deck?
Greedy.
Yeah,
so greedy.
I said the same thing when we watched him earlier.
Yeah, yeah. This is a deck that every single one of its 2-drops requires both green and white mana.
Yeah.
Like I've played like 14 dual lands in this green-white deck, and it's not enough.
Yeah, you've actually dabbled in the Guildgate.
I have played Selesnya Guildgate.
Yeah.
I have registered 3 Selesnya Guildgate and later regretted not playing 4.
Yeah. That is yikes.
So yeah.
Scavenging Ooze.
Yes.
That is not a Sylvan Caryatid, and that's going to mean that Briksza's not going to be able to fly off very quickly. Policeman Line going to come in here for 3. No blocks, of course. Briksza going to go down to 17. We'll see what the boss has to play. He's going to play a Loxodon Smiter after taking 2 from Temple Guard. It's a really good start for Andy.
Yeah, and this is the kind of curve the green white's capable of. Obviously, a 1-drop would have really tied things together, but I mean, you can just compare. Both players had 2-drop into 3-drop, and look who's are way bigger.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, of course, Rudy is playing more Moldrifters and not so many Baneslayers. Yep. You know, if he gets to live and do things for a little while, he's gonna like actually take advantage of the abilities on these 2 creatures, and that's gonna put him ahead. But Boswell is really gonna try to make sure that doesn't happen.
That's the plan. Yes. He does not want to play a longer game.
No, we caught a flash of Andy's hand. It looked like there's quite a bit of land in there.
Yeah, he's got 2 Mana Confluence. He has a Boon Satyr. Looks like a Banishing Light, and then I think the other card in the middle there is a Voice of Resurgence. I do not believe it's a Celestian Charm. Celestian Charm would make things very easy for him.
Turn him sideways?
Yeah.
Well, there's an argument for actually holding Selesnya Charm for a more opportune moment and banishing lighting here.
That's what we're going to do. Get Corsair out of the way, into the red zone we go. It's an attack for 70, and this is the thing that I really do like about the green-white deck is the creatures just in a vacuum are quite powerful. You close the game out very, very quickly.
Yep. And yeah, and the tension there for Boswell is, of course, we've seen several Planeswalkers out of Rudy at this stage. You know that those Banishing Lights are mercilessly overworked here.
Yep.
So
Pick and choose appropriately.
You would love to hold one until you get rid of, you know, Liliana or Nissa or Xenaghost or something like that. But getting to attack for 7 profitably is pretty valuable as well.
Abrupt Decay, the top card. Blood Crypt going to come into play. Tap Briksza going to gain a life there. This is just pass the turn back. Scavenging is actually pretty good against green white typically, but you have to exchange resources first. He hasn't been able to do that yet.
Yeah, Ooze is good against all aggro decks to some extent. It's not that great on turn 2. And in a deck like this, it's probably your worst turn 2 play.
Yeah.
You would much rather just be killing something.
Yeah. Ooze is such an interesting card. Like, it's obviously very good, but it's a creature that, even though it costs 2 mana, is not something you generally want to cast on turn 2. It's normally just like, you know, I think of it as like a turn 5 card.
Yeah. It was interesting to me to see the way that Ooze in Standard compared to Ooze in Modern and Ooze in Legacy. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't think it would have played out that way.
They're wildly different.
Yeah.
Like, context is everything.
Yeah, Ooze is actually, it gets progressively better the bigger the format gets, it seems like. I feel like that's not the case for most cards.
Fleeceman Lion, is it going to go monstrous? It is not. What's going to happen here is a Boon Satyr on a Loxodon Smiter Bestow. We're going to get 8 points of damage across. Scavenging is going to bite the dust, and Boswell is pretty far ahead right now. He does have Celestian Charm in his hand, so Abrupt Decay will be the draw. Mizian Mortar's on top of the deck. Briksza sitting at 3 with just a Corsair Crewfix, and it has no interest in blocking either of these creatures.
No. Yeah, and I like that he took the time to actually bolster the bigger threat there, because of course he knows that Abrupt Decay is coming, And it's kind of like one of those situations where you know they're going to Sphinx's Revelation, so you just have to jam your best threat and force them to use mana, like countering that rather than revving for the full amount. Basically, what he's trying to do here is to get Rudy to do anything other than Abrupt Decay that Banishing Light.
Briksza's going to go down to 2 now. He's going to gain a life, go back up to 3, make his ooze into a 3/3, and be able to cast Abrupt Decay now.
Right. And of course, he has to use it on one of Andy's threats now.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to. He could just chump block with both of his creatures. I don't love that play.
I'm not in love with that either. Boswell draws his card for the turn again. 5 lands in play, has the ability to activate the monstrosity on Fleece main line, does have a land in his hand. Looks like he's also looking at a copy of Voice of Resurgence. He looks like he was considering playing that pre-combat, but held off for a moment. Now, playing Voicer is actually pretty interesting because it forces the hand of the Abrupt Decay in response, and now it forces Briksza to make a decision on what he wants to Abrupt Decay.
It does. But in Boswell's case here, he actually kind of forces Briksza to make the same decision just by leaving 5 mana out.
Yep.
Activating Fleece Main Lion is possibly the more powerful play than putting Voice of Resurgence into play. But the tricky part is that you can't just attack and leave your 5 mana out, because Rudy would be happy to trade, I think, a 3/3 Scavenging Ooze with an unmonstrous Fleece Main Lion.
I imagine that's the
You just
case.
kind of like shove it in front. If Andy attempts to monstrous, then you Abrupt Decay in response. And of course, if that plays out, you actually also have to chump block with your Force of Prefix. So that is unfortunate. You don't want to do that, but that allows you to untap. Andy has spent his entire turn activating that monstrous ability. You have just 1 threat to deal with, and potentially you get to play a Planeswalker and start going to work. Like play a Xenagos, stabilize in that fashion.
Chump block a couple times, work that way.
So a lot of lines that Andy has to consider here. He is just going to give up the opportunity to Monstrous Fleece Main Lion and play Voice of Resurgence and put the ball in Rudy's court.
I would respond.
I recommend responding.
As a pro tip from a former professional.
Yes.
I would respond. Here we go.
He is going to respond. Now, what would you target?
Don't ask me. I don't know. Don't ask me the hard questions.
Fair enough.
That's why I'm a former professional.
All right, cool. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what to target either.
I mean, the thing that makes this compelling, right, is that it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Yes.
I think one could argue that there are really no good targets right now.
There are no good targets, and in that sense, there are also no bad ones. So
Yeah, that's true,
see?
too.
Tails never fails. Man.
That's true. He's going to take care of the Loxodon and Smiter. Boonsader's going to come in now. It's a 4/2, and it can attack, of course, because it was in last turn. So here are your blocks very, very quickly. And the Boz is reaching for mana.
Does he have an additional combat trick?
He's got a Charm. Charm is not lethal at this point, though.
No, but it ends the game just the same, I'm pretty sure.
Unless you win in combat. You can't even get the Scavenging Ooze off the table, because Fleece Main Lion going to become a 5/5 now. Ooze, of course, a 3/3. Trample over for 2. Boonsader and Courser are going to trade, but Boz is still left with a very good board.
Yes. And saw 2 of the cards in Rudy's hand, Desecration Demon and Storm Breath Dragon. Neither of those cards stabilize. I think those are just, he's down to those 2, right?
We know Mortar's on top of his deck.
Mortars also doesn't do it.
No, Mortar's okay. Mortar's, you take care of Fleece Main Lion, and then Mutavault blocks the...
Oh, that's a Mutavault
voice,
in there.
yeah.
I didn't see that Mutavault.
I mean, Boswell has to draw nothing over the next couple of turns, but if that's what it takes...
Yep.
Let's see what this is. That's an experiment one.
It's not nothing.
Yeah. Here's an attack.
Yep.
There's the trade.
I love this interaction.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Of course, the Poison Resurgence is going to convert into a 2/2 elemental, 2/2 conveniently big enough to evolve that experiment one. And Rudy, just as he was when we started, facing down a potential 2 lethal attackers. You can only see 1 in play right now. We are no doubt fishing out an Evan Irwin elemental token.
Yeah, I think he's on a no-fer. I don't think he...
Anger the Gods. So he can't cast it.
yeah, Scavenging Ooze check. No, he can cast Anger. He's got a Blood Crypt.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, he can cast that, so...
Okay,
It's
Anger,
that or
yeah.
Scavenging Ooze. Miscutter Hydra, not you.
That doesn't do it.
We got the token just in time.
Right.
We just in time. Andy Boswell's going to win this match over Rudy Briksza. 2-1. Green-white aggro. Going to take down Jund midrange. You can see Rudy a little bit disappointed here, but the Boz knows his way around a Selesnya deck.
He
That's
does.
for sure.
He sure does.